When it comes to making you a BA coder, a badass coder, organization and reusability are key. I know that sounds a little bit lame, but hear me out. We talked a little bit about organization and reusability with our last nut and bolt objects. But here are the things about objects alone. They're just the crust, the precipice. They don't quite get us there. What I'm trying to accept into you is that we have to move beyond just banging out code snippets. We have to start thinking about code design. And one of those ways is a nut and bolt that I'm going to introduce to you called object-oriented programming. Now, if you've heard of object-oriented programming, or if you have not, and you start to Google it, you may find that is a steep subject. But I'm going to use my experience to teach you the top 20% of what you need to know about OOP. Let's unpack it. In order to introduce this subject to you, we need to shift your thinking. So I have an analogy for you. Bear with me. So if you followed this tutorial in the past, what we've done is we've written code snippets or small pieces of code that do certain things. While that's awesome, and you can probably say that you know the basics of coding. No, don't do that. You're not there yet, but you know a good chunk already about the basic components of coding. Think about what we've learned so far as you needing to build something and basically being able to take out a sheet of paper and draw shapes to build that something. Now that's 2D thinking. And what I mean by that is that's one level, right? It's a flat level. It's not very complex, and it definitely helps, but it doesn't help you build things in our 3D world. But when you start to organize your code into ways that could be recognizable, ways that could be repeatable, ways that code behaves in an expected way, that changes things. We introduced some of this with objects. Remember, we said objects are there to help you organize variables into logical blocks. And I repeated that over and over again in all of our object tutorials. However, that wasn't the whole story. You see, objects are not only for helping you logically store things that make sense together, like variables or functions. They're not only there to help you to conveniently pass globs of variables back and forth between functions or allow you to be able to write code that's reusable. Objects are also there to help you do a couple of other things. Objects help you with being able to take code and give it form, like clay. Give it function, give it a name, give it attributes. Ergo, object-oriented programming is the portal that takes you from the 2D world of coding to the 3D world of coding. Like Legos. Everyone remembers Legos growing up, and if you didn't play with them, you probably stepped on one or two. There are a lot of philosophies on the subject, but from my experience, to basically run a knife through it, to run Occam's razor through it, what you basically need to know are three things. Those three things are classes, inheritance, and polymorphism. Classes are basically objects on steroids. You'll notice that in our last tutorial, we looked at some languages that define their objects with the keyword class. That's for a reason. It's because actually they're using a concept of classes. So we'll talk all about classes. But to give you a preview, classes are basically a blueprint that allows you to create a predefined object with just a couple of keywords. So going back to our 3D example in the Lego blocks, you can think of these as a way to create a predefined Lego piece as you need. And you can plug those in different places in your code in your project to make the shapes that you want, right? Inheritance is the other subject that we were talking about before. And think of inheritance as a way to take those previously described classes and use some sort of inheritance to allow you to quickly create new ones. You've probably heard of the word inheritance when you talked about genetics or genomics in your elementary biology class. Each new person inherits some type of trait or some type of look or behavior or something from one or both of their parents. It's the same concept here. Some languages allow you to actually use inheritance so that your classes can inherit some behaviors and things from the parent classes, which allows you to quickly be able to create new objects and also start to file those objects into families of objects. So again, now we're starting to get into the concept of organization, but also you get to pick up speed because you don't have to recreate an entire object in order to say I want something that's kind of like this, but does something a little bit different. In Legos, it's cool to notice that most of Legos kind of look like they start from those basic blocks, but they have some variants in them. So they inherit some properties from the original Lego block, and they do something slightly different for some other function or form in the kits that you play with. Or if you've done several Lego kits, it's pretty neat how they can take those little blocks and do pretty unique things with the shapes and stuff to make buildings and animals and all sorts of stuff. But anyway, it speeds things up because now you can start quickly creating new ones and help you quickly recognize and remember the behavior of certain pieces. Finally, we're going to talk about polymorphism. And polymorphism is a way to take these classes and allows you to describe in your code in places where you might want to get very specific on the very specific Lego piece that you want to be able to use a function, or you can be as generic as you want to. You can say, I want any Lego that can fit 6 pieces to use this piece of code or to run this function. And as well as if anyone else were to use your code, it will give them guidance on exactly how you want that code to be used, or give them the ability to expand upon what you did as well. So lots of benefits there. So we're going to talk about those 3 big blocks of object-oriented programming. That's going to get you the top 20% that you need to know about it. There absolutely are more subjects in object-oriented programming, and I'll sprinkle some of those things in our tutorials here, but I also will advise you to take the link that I'll put in the description below out to websites that have lots of information on this stuff if you're interested. And as you start to do more with object-oriented programming, you'll kind of see those things. So we'll start out with classes and what the heck are they and why they matter. Let's go.